into the topic of today, which is a response to Francis's question, and I hope I answered completely. The question that she posed a few weeks ago was, if the Jewish home is considered the center of the Jewish Jewish religion and the Jewish world, then why, if I'm understanding the question correctly, does the rabbi seem to hold such a prominent place in our world? Would that be an accurate?
That's better than I phrased
Okay.
it.
Okay, I think that's pretty much how I understood it. So I'm going to attempt to answer that question today. In the process of doing so, I planned a little bit more information than would pertain to the exact question in order to give a context, historical and social context. Would that be all right?
Oh, that's
okay.
wonderful.
So I plan to make a class out of it. Okay, so I want to begin going back to the idea before we can talk about the significance of the rabbi or the role of the rabbi in today's world. We need to just go back in history just for a bit and discuss where the whole idea of a rabbi came from. Are the rabbis of today the same as the rabbis in Moshe's time? The short answer is no. And so if not, then what happened? How did we get to the point where we are today? What is this thing called a rabbi, and where did he come from? Okay, so the origins of smicha. Now, smicha, when I say the word smicha, I'm referring to the process of ordaining rabbis. Okay, because there is a process of ordination, right? Degree getting in the secular way of putting it. And smicha originally meant, by the way, literally means laying on of hands, which is originally how it was done, how ordination was done. So let's go back to the origins of smicha. What was the original rabbi like? What was that whole thing? So as we talked about regarding a shul, a synagogue, there's no mention of a rabbi in the Torah. No mention of a rabbi in the Torah, because they didn't exist back then. We didn't exist in Moshe's time as we know them today. Right? The greatest prophets and leaders of our times were not called rabbi. They were not rabbis. They were actually called zakanim. Zakanim. So zakanim today, the word zakain is known as an old man, but actually Rashi comments, because they're called zakanim in the Torah. Zakanim, Rashi says, is an acronym standing for Zeh Koneh Chachma. He buys wisdom. Zeh Koneh Zayin, Za, Kain for Koneh, and then Chachma. Zeh Koneh. So this person bought wisdom, is the meaning of the word Zakain, Zakanim. Okay, so the term rabbi really appears much, much, much later in our history. We're talking about the Common Era time already, in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara. That's the first time you have the term that relates to what we would call rabbi today. And in the Gemara's time, it was Rabbi or Rav or Rabban. Okay, and the meaning of the word rabbi is literally Rav means great one. So, and it's been loosely translated Rabbi or rabbi as my master. That's the approximate definition of the word. Okay, so going back to the original form of rabbi. So the original form of ordination started with Moses at Sinai. The first person to be ordained was Yehoshua. So Moshe actually laid his hands on Yehoshua's head and placed his hand upon him. The verse says, and he placed his hands upon him and commanded him in accordance with what the Lord had spoken. Okay. Moses also ordained in this way the 70 judges, who would be the Sanhedrin. He didn't do that with any mention of laying on the hands. And then in turn, Joshua and the 70 elders ordained others, okay, and they in turn gave smicha to their disciples. This tradition continued in this form, laying on of the hands, from teacher to disciple, all the way down to the time of the Gemara, the Talmudic era, okay. So the rabbis of the Talmudic era were able to trace their rabbinic lineage, if you will, all the way back to Moshe in a direct line, okay. So smicha really ensured that the student was the next link in the tradition from Sinai. Okay? Yes?
So the smicha was telling the next one that you are accepting?
Yeah. What did they actually say, you're asking me?
What was it called? You're saying it was called
They were called zakenim. In other words, the term that would apply to these men would be zakenim, were not rabbis. That's at what point the term rabbi appeared, I don't know.
What was he ordaining to do? To teach?
Okay, I'll get to that. Okay, so here is my next point exactly. What did original classical smicha mean for the student who was ordained? It authorized this person to judge cases on a Jewish court that involved any sort of punitive punishment from the Torah, like lashes or the death penalty. Okay, so a Torah-invoked penalty. So smicha allowed a person to be a dayan, a judge, allowed them to adjudicate on a beis din. That's what it meant, power to adjudicate on a beis din. That was it. That was what original smicha meant. Okay. There were lots of rules associated with this original smicha. One of the interesting things was this could only happen in Israel, in the land of Israel. Okay, aside from Moshe's original ordination, of course, which did not happen in Israel since he never entered the land. Okay, so this was classical smicha. Now, when did this all end? Because today, obviously, we ordain rabbis in America and in every country of the world, so we clearly don't have this original rule. What changed? Well, this kind of smicha ended around 132, 135 Common Era during the Roman occupation of the land of Israel. The Emperor Hadrian was seeing the system of the courts that the Jews had in Israel, the Sanhedrin, which was the high court, right? He saw the Sanhedrin and this system of ordaining rabbis or ordaining judges rather, as their persistent attempt at self-rule. He didn't want this autonomy. He wanted to crush it. He wanted to crush the Jews' spirit, as well as the practical governance that they had of themselves, and so he outlawed smicha. He made it a decree that it would be punishable by death to receive or to give smicha. So that basically ended classical smicha. That was the end of that. So sometime in the Talmudic era, right after, so that it ended at some point. It coincides, interestingly enough, with Hillel II establishing the calendar as we know it today. Remember, before we didn't used to have a running calendar. We didn't used to know when the next year's Pesach would take place, for example. How did we establish the holidays on a month-to-month basis? It involved the beis din, the court, the Jewish court system, and it involved having classically ordained rabbis or men, classically ordained judges, deliberating based on a witness's account that they saw the new moon, to then establish that next month's new moon and the dates of that calendar. And thus, why is this important? Because without the establishment of a new moon, we wouldn't know when to celebrate the holidays, right? Without knowing this is the first day of the new month, how can I then know this is the 14th day of the month? So the establishment of the Jewish month, the new month, was of prime importance to the continuation of keeping the holidays on the right day, and that was supremely important. Of course, it is supremely important in our religion. Therefore, when Hillel II saw that the ordination system was going to be dying out, then this system of blessing the new moon and thus establishing the dates of the calendar for the next month was in danger of being lost. And that's when that's why he created the calendar, the set calendar that we know today, which is a perpetual calendar that we have, and we don't have to worry about the new moon, when is the next Yom Tov. We know he established the calendar as we know it today. Okay. So, what year? I'm not sure. Somewhere around 359 CE, maybe 300 CE, somewhere around that.
So there was like a time span between the ban of Hadrian and the.
Yes, right. The dates are not so. The dates are a little fuzzy because, we're not sure exactly when these things happened. I mean, clearly there may have been even despite Hadrian's ban and decree, I'm sure there was still ordination happening. There's a story in the Gemara, actually, was it in the Gemara? I'm not sure if it's when it was written. There's a story about, I think it's in the Gemara, about a great teacher. I don't remember the name, I'm sorry. It's a famous story where he takes his 5 Talmidim, 5 students of his, into the desert between 2 great rocks or mountains, because Hadrian had said, not only will I kill the rabbi who ordains and the student who receives ordination, but I will destroy the city it happens in. So he took them into the desert so that a city wouldn't be in danger, and he deliberately ordained them and then scattered them, and sent them away so they would be, the last remaining vestiges of actual classical smicha. And then they killed him, of course. So there probably was, a limited few people who were receiving ordination, but by the time of Hillel, maybe a century or 2 later, it was in danger of dying out completely. Okay, so there was, by the way, an attempt to reinstate classical smicha once that ended. There was an attempt to reinstate it, to try to get that system back after the expulsion of the Jews in 1492 in Spain. After the Spanish expulsion, there's a very interesting reason. The Jews in Spain, they felt, the ones who had been living as Marranos, they had been living double lives. In secret, in privacy of their own home, they were practicing Jews, and in public they were practicing Christians, Catholics, I guess. And after the expulsion, there was a lot of lingering guilt, apparently, in these Jewish people who had desecrated God's name in public by going to church, etc., worshiping, and they felt that they felt terrified of the fact that they would, as a result of this, receive the worst punishment that they could receive from God, which is kares, being cut off from the nation of Israel, and they wanted, as a result, they said, we'd rather, the rabbinic authorities of the time said, let's reestablish the Sanhedrin, let's reestablish a court system, and then what we can do is give lashes, give a corporal punishment to these Jews as a way of, what would be the word, getting rid of their sins, expunging their guilt, from these sins, and they would feel better. They would know that they were punished already, so God wouldn't have to punish them in a greater way. That was the thinking behind let's reestablish the Sanhedrin. The problem was that one of the ways that you have to, it's sort of a catch-22 really. In order to reestablish the Sanhedrin, you have to have rabbis who have classic ordination. Okay. There were none, and the catch-22 is that in order to have rabbis who receive classic ordination, you've got to have the Sanhedrin. So you've got to have court. It was a catch-22. It didn't take. You also need to have, one other requirement would be, you need to have complete agreement from all rabbinic authorities, and that was impossible to get, as it always is. Complete agreement. So it didn't work. Okay. So once classical smicha ended, okay, there was no official rabbi person. No man had the official power of the Sanhedrin. Again, remember that was what a classical smicha meant: power to adjudicate on a court. Okay, that's why, by the way, today we can't recreate the Sanhedrin as well. We don't have. There's no one who has classical smicha the way it has to be. Okay, so today's smicha, okay, is an imitation of this classical kind. Okay, it is, there's no hand laying involved, okay? The ordination today has really no connection to the original smicha. Today, rabbinic ordination means 3 things. Okay, it's simply a way of receiving permission from your teacher to do 3 things. Number 1, to rule on halachic matters, in other words, to answer halachic questions and to resolve halachic disputes. All right. Number 2, it means that a person can serve as a synagogue rabbi, a clergy, shul clergy. And number 3, it means a person can serve on a beis din. He can be a judge on a court of Jewish law, which we do still have today, only dealing with monetary matters, of course, since we're not authorized a rabbi today is not authorized to mete out any punishment from the Torah, right? There's no corporal punishment anymore. So we just have a court that deals with monetary matters as well as some other things. Okay? Now there are two levels of smicha that are given today, two levels of ordination. One is the basic, what I would call the master's degree of rabbinics would be the Yore Yore degree, which indicates that a person is authorized to rule on matters dealing with daily life, kashrus, and other questions of daily life that comes up. And the higher level rabbinic degree, which I call the PhD of rabbinics, is the Yadin Yadin, which authorizes a person even in a higher level. It means that it's a more advanced level of smicha, and it authorizes him to serve as a judge on a beis din. Okay? Yeah. So today, anyone who is ordained as a rabbi has the authority to sit on a beis din and to rule on a beis din. But the person who receives the higher level ordination is obviously a little bit more expert. So he has a higher level. It's a higher degree. So in other words, if you were looking for a doctor, you can go to it and you had a specific problem. You can go to your MD, who has a degree in medicine, or you can go to a specialist who might have a higher degree in that area that you're looking for. And that's all it means. It's a higher degree. Okay? So the evolution of the modern rabbi, this to me is a little bit interesting because today's shul rabbi is a little bit different from what the rabbi started out to be. Even, I'm not saying going back to Moshe, I'm saying even in the modern era. So the evolution of the modern era. Okay, the evolution of the modern rabbi. So the earliest rabbis, again, we're talking now about people who received smicha in the modern way of simply getting a degree that indicated they had a certain level of learning and were allowed to rule on halachic matters. These rabbis were teachers and masters of jurisprudence. They knew the halacha, right? They weren't clergymen. So even when you had the rise of the shul, of the synagogue, the rabbi was not associated with the shul. It would be associated more with the community. Okay, and the professional rabbi basically was unknown before the 14th century. Right? This is really following the dictum that there's a pasuk in Pirkei Avos that says that you should not make a spade out of the Torah, meaning we shouldn't use the Torah to get money. In other words, this meant that a person shouldn't use the Torah for a profession. Okay, so therefore, a scholar who was capable of rendering decisions in Jewish law, they performed these functions without any pay. Okay, most of them had other jobs that enabled them to work at other things. For example, great scholars like Maimonides in the 12th century, Spain and Egypt, and Nachmanides in the later century were doctors. They made their living in medicine, and they wrote books on the side, and they were scholars as well. As late as the 16th century, scholars were priding themselves on the fact that they're not making a living through Torah. They're serving as communal rabbis, but not to receive any money. What happened to change this is that as the centuries went on, especially after the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, economic conditions worsened for the Jews. Once the Jews were expelled from Spain, they went on to move to various Eastern Europe communities. There were worse economic conditions, and as a result, a scholar was not able to sustain himself, right, without having pay for what he was doing. And so there arose the concept of the village rabbi or the community rabbi, whose job it was to serve as this expert in jurisprudence and halacha, and to do various pastoral work like visiting the sick. And at the time, again, it was not a matter of being connected to a particular synagogue. It was a community job, and that everyone sort of, they had a hand in paying. They helped pay. It was a communal job. Everyone chipped in, as it were, to pay this rabbi's salary. And so therefore you have a lot, if you think about stories of, the shtetl, you have a lot of stories of the town rabbi, rather than a shul rabbi, there was the town rabbi. Okay.
What century are you talking about?
Well, I'm guessing we're talking about I'm guessing like the 1700s, 1700s and on. Okay. And back then, again, the expectations for what a rabbi was very different from expectations today. In the olden days, rabbi wasn't expected to be on call 24/7. He was a community rabbi. He did his learning. The expectation was, we're paying him to just be the expert. We're paying him to know what he needs to know. And if we have a question, we're going to approach him. Right? Today, it's quite different. Right? Today it's very funny. My husband often gets postings of rabbinic positions, job positions, because he belongs to this organization, that organization. And my husband sometimes will show me what the community puts out in terms of what they're expecting in a job description, right? Any job has a good job description, and it's amazing what communities are expecting in their rabbi today. They're not. It used to be that even a generation ago, the rabbi was expected to give a nice little shiur on Shabbos. That was about it. Maybe a lecture in the evening once or twice a week. Today's rabbi is expected to be on call, first of all, 24/7. Call him any time of day or night you have a question, no problem. He's expected to be the pastor, taking care of pastoral duties, visiting the sick in the hospital, comforting, God forbid, mourners, etc. He's expected to run the shul. He's expected to take care of the administration of the shul. He's expected to take care of financing and campaigning and then outreach and children's programming, and come up with innovating program that really reaches out to every segment of the shul. He's supposed to be everything. Social worker, certainly. People come to him with their problems and talk to him. Aside from the weekly sermon, so he's really expected to be a much greater figure than it used to be even a generation ago. And I think also today, people hire a rabbi, shul hires a rabbi in order that the rabbi should develop a relationship with his congregants. And this is important from a very practical point of view of making halachic decisions, because very often a halachic decision will be different in one case than in another case, based on who the person asking is. Who is the person asking, and also what is the background, what is their motivation, what is, for example, a person who has been raised Orthodox and been keeping Shabbos properly all their life comes to the rabbi and says, "Rabbi, can I drive to shul on Shabbos?" That person is going to get a very different answer from the rabbi than a person who approaches the rabbi with the same question, but who has never kept Shabbos and is trying to do a little bit more in terms of keeping Shabbos, wants to take on more mitzvos, right? But is not yet really ready to take on every mitzvah. And in that case, the rabbi's answer is going to be very different. Okay, this necessitates, getting to develop a relationship between the rabbi and the congregant. When the better the rabbi knows his congregants, the better he can answer their halachic questions and their other kind of questions, not just halachic, that they have for him. So that's another reason that the rabbi is so important in a community. Okay. I need to say a word about what a rabbi is not. Okay, what a rabbi is not. A rabbi is not a priest. Okay, and I mean this in two ways, in terms of what a Jewish priest is, and in terms of what a Christian priest is. So in terms of a Jewish priest is a Kohen. Mm-hmm. Kohen is someone from the tribe of Levi, someone descended from Aaron. And today, unfortunately, because we don't have a temple anymore, a Jewish priest is only a title, really, with very few actual differences in what he does and the ritual honors accorded him, or ritual jobs accorded him. He has the job of blessing a congregation on the holidays during prayer, right, at the end of prayer. And he is afforded certain honors in terms of shul honors. For example, the Kohen, if there is a Kohen in the shul, is the first one to be called up for an aliyah, to read from the Torah or to give a blessing on the Torah. In addition, he's also the first one. He's going to be the first one that receives makes a bracha during Sheva Brachas, during a wedding or during Sheva Brachas. So but that's about it. The priest doesn't have any job. A rabbi is not a priest. A priest is not a rabbi. Those are two separate things. In other words, a rabbi can't really take the place of a priest if there's no. Actually, I'm not quite positive. Yeah, I'm sure. There's no Kohen in shul. What happens on Yom Tov? I'm not sure about that one. Sorry, but they're different positions. Now, what do I mean when I say a rabbi is not a Christian priest? So the idea of a Christian priest is that the priest has or minister has some elevated responsibilities. In other words, some elevated authority to perform certain rituals in church. Right? We talked about this when I talked about shuls. We think about the church setting, the church, the way it is organized. Everyone's facing up front and looking at the action. The action is all happening up front by the clergyman, right? He's doing whatever he's doing. This is not the idea that we have of a rabbi. In other words, a rabbi to us doesn't have any more authority to perform any of the rituals in shul or elsewhere than any other regular person, any other regular man in shul does. The rabbi does not have a special, he's not necessarily the one you need to ask to read the Torah, or that you need to ask to be the prayer leader, right? He doesn't have any more authority to do those things. And these rituals done in shul by any other man in shul are just as valid as if the rabbi would do it. Okay, so the rabbi is on an equal footing with the congregants. The rabbi has an equal voice in the prayers, but again, so do the other congregants. Anybody who's sufficiently educated can lead the services, or read from the Torah, or make a bracha on the Torah. Right? It doesn't give him the rabbi doesn't have any special authority to conduct the religious services. And we also don't have this idea of a rabbi as an intermediary for a plain person, a non-clergy. The Christian idea of a priest is, especially in the Catholic religion, is you go to the priest to be absolved of your sins. You go and confess your sins to him, and then he gives you, right? You're forgiven. He has to go through a special, say this and do this, and then you're forgiven. But it has to be done through an intermediary in the Catholic Church. We don't have any such idea of the rabbi. Okay, there's a story that illustrates this nicely. A rabbi was approached by a woman with her child. I guess the child was sick, or there was some need for a prayer, for a special blessing for the child. So she asked the rabbi, "Would you please pray for my child, or please give him a special blessing?" The rabbi said to her, "Okay, but it'll cost you $1,000, some astronomical amount." The woman said, "Gee, I really can't afford that. Would you take 100? The rabbi said, "Nope, it's going to be $1,000. That's my going rate for a prayer." And so they start haggling back and forth. And the woman, the rabbi is firm on his price. The woman finally gets so upset. She huffs out of the room. She says, "You know what? I don't need you. I don't need you to pray for me. I'll do it on my own." At which point the rabbi goes, "Good. I was hoping to hear that answer from you. I am not the one to be praying for your child. You are the better choice. You're the one that has to be doing it. You're the one God wants to hear from, and your prayers will be more powerful because God sent you this issue. That means he wants to hear from you, not from me." And of course we have the same story in the Torah between Rachel and Yaakov. Remember, Rachel had no children and she wanted children. She approaches Yaakov and she says, "Give me children." And he says, "It's up to you. I can't." He speaks harshly to her. And his message was, God wants you to pray. doesn't want, it's not going to work if it's my prayers. It has to be from you. So that's what a rabbi is not. Okay. So now let's come to your question finally after all that introduction. What is it about, do we still have that question? Or, I mean, I'm going to answer it anyway. I'm going to continue, but has it been a little bit more clarified?
Yeah, and I was, excuse me, Mama.
Sure.
I was confusing the Kohen with the priestly class with the rabbi.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, so those, again, a rabbi can be, by the way, from the tribe of Levi. He can be a Kohen. A person who is a Kohen simply means my son is a Kohen. That's only because his father was a Kohen. And only because his grandfather was a Kohen. And that's only because his father was. So it simply indicates that you are in the tribe, you are a descendant of Aharon. That's what it means. They can trace their lineage all the way back to Aharon, Moshe's brother, right? Again, in terms of rituals, in terms of what they do, what they don't do, a Kohen only has a few, as I said, a few certain tasks. One is blessing a congregation on the Yom Tov, on the holiday. At the end of the prayer service, they will come up and they will bless the congregation in the way that they used to do back in the temple days. The same way, pretty much. The same format, the same tune, supposedly, and the same words. In terms of the other notable thing about a Kohen is that he will get called up to Torah first. If there's no Kohen, then they obviously can't. They will get called up to the Torah to do the blessing on the Torah, to have an aliyah, and they might get an honor during Sheva Brachas to say the first blessing over the wine after Sheva Brachas. That's about it. Can't think of anything else. Can you think of anything else the Kohen does these days?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, there are restrictions on a Kohen today, right? Thank you. About specifically who a Kohen may not marry, what kind of, right? Beyond that, I can't think there's any difference. But again, so a rabbi doesn't do any of those things. In other words, he can take the place of a Kohen only if there's no other Kohen there to have an aliyah first. But it's not the same position. The rabbi is simply a person who has a higher degree in Jewish jurisprudence. Okay. Yeah, you had a question?
And then when the temple is restored, the Kohanes will be the ones who serve. Right.
So the Kohen in the times of the temple had, of course, all the jobs of doing the temple work, right? They would take care of the running of the temple. They would take care of the sacrifices. They would, burn the sacrifices. They would do everything required. That was their job. The Kohen and the Levi, who was also from the tribe of Levi, right? The Levium, they would also have the job of working in the temple. Since we don't have a temple, the Kohen doesn't have any of these tasks, but we only have the vestige of the honor afforded this person who is set aside by God as a special tribe. And as Miriam mentioned, when we have the reinstatement of the temple in the times of Mashiach, the Messiah, then it is understood they will resume their jobs, their tasks. As a matter of fact, I believe there's a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. I'm not sure which one. There may be more than one by now, but I remember hearing about a specific school that is training Kohanim in their work, in the practical tasks of doing temple work as a way of being prepared. We always say we believe that in one of the fundamental beliefs that we say is that I believe that Mashiach is coming, and we also teach our kids he can come every day. This is a great story of any day. Sorry, not every day, any day. This is a great story about a European rabbi, I think, who constantly walked around with a packed suitcase, and had one right by his house door, and that was because he was prepared. Any minute, if the Messiah would come, he was going to be ready. So this idea that it's drilled into us that Messiah can come any day, we're hoping for him every day. We pray for him every day. We say we hope he comes, and we should be ready for him. So this yeshiva in Israel is actually doing something about it. If the Messiah really did come tomorrow, what would we do? And we started building a temple. What would we know what to do? No, not really. Kohanim don't have that knowledge anymore that they used to have, their practical knowledge. Anyway, getting back to, you have a question, Barbara? Okay. Getting back to the question, now we're going to really dig deep into Francis's question of what is so important about the rabbi. So in order to answer that, let's just focus for a minute on the position of the shul in Jewish life. Okay? So we call a shul is called a beis knesses, which literally means house of gathering or assembly. This, by the way, is where the Greek word synagogue comes from. Okay, it's a house of gathering, house of assembly. Now, there is an inherent holiness to a shul. Okay, we call a shul, a synagogue, a mikdash ma'at, a miniature temple, because we believe that it is the remnant, it's the vestige of the temple in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem, and it has, in fact, we model our shuls a little bit on the temple. We copy certain things from it, including the Ner Tamid, the candle or light that is the perpetual light above. Right, we have the services imitate the services in the temple. Our prayer services, in other words, morning, afternoon, and night, imitate the prayer services of, not the prayer service, the sacrifices in the temple, morning, afternoon, and night. Okay, so we believe in an inherent specialness to that building. Again, keeping in mind that what we've said, that a shul can be really anywhere. It doesn't have to be this huge building. It can be in someone's basement as well. But we do have also a sense of the divine presence being there and existing and resting where we pray together as a group. We believe that there is a special, a high level of prayer when it is in a communal setting, and so we understand that God's presence is there with us when we do that. And it's also a cohesive social force in our community. Okay, however, getting back to the point that we're making, the shul is not synonymous with Judaism. It doesn't have authority over the religion the way lahavdil, comparatively speaking, or contrasting to the Christian religion, where the church is the authority. Okay, Judaism is not embodied in any institution. It's not embodied in the yeshiva. It's not embodied in the kollel. It's not embodied in the shul. It doesn't have the force of an authority. The only authority in our religion is the Torah, the written Torah and the oral Torah. That's it. Authority is also diffused throughout rabbinic communities. The heads of communities, the rabbinic heads of communities, have authority over their respective communities. There's no, unlike in a church where everything is centered in one person, and then diffused, and then it's trickle down theory from the Pope down in the Catholic religion. The shul really just provides a place where we do certain things that are required of us, right? Communal prayer is required. Charity, we also do charity. We also study there. So, as such, it is an instrument of the faith. It's an instrument of the faith. It allows us to do what we need to do. It's not dependent on a clergy person. In fact, there are shuls that don't have a rabbi. We don't need one. Again, as I said before, any person who's able to read from the Torah can read from the Torah. Any person who can lead prayers can lead prayers. The same thing goes with the running of a shul. A wedding. So a wedding, can anybody do a wedding? Strictly speaking, someone who knows what to do at a chuppah can, I think, if I'm not mistaken, can. However, that being said, a wedding is quite an important ritual. And, I think the analogy could be made to when you want to see somebody for your health, would you go to a person who's really well read on the subject, or would you go to someone who has that degree? You want the expert with the degree who is certified to to rule for you on medical matters. In a similar way, when it comes to a wedding, you want somebody there who knows what needs to be done, because there are certain things that need to be done, right? The kasuba needs to be witnessed by 2 witnesses. It has to be signed. There are the tanam has to be done in a certain way. There is a process, a legal process, to the acquisition of a bride by a man, and therefore, because it is such a legal event, it's a legal as well as a ritual event, you want to make sure that you have the legal expert, who's the rabbi, right? He's the legal expert. You want to make sure he's there and making sure everything is functioning according to halacha, right? So again, it's just a matter of making sure you have someone there who knows what he's doing. Yeah, Barbara?
I would understand that in a situation where you're not able to get such authority, it would suffice for the, call them girl, to say, with this ring I did well.
Yes. That line is the critical line, as it were, in the ceremony, meaning that, and it becomes problematic if a man, I mean, there have been stories where, I remember, heard one story where, as a joke at a party, a man took a ring and said this to his female companion. They had rabbinical problems. They had halachic issues after that, because that, in effect, creates the union of the two. So it's a problem, yeah. But so that is the crux of the ceremony. When he puts the ring on her finger, they're married. It's not the breaking of the glass that does it. Not at all the breaking of the glass that does it. Once he puts the ring on her finger, says, right, I'm now making you holy to me. I'm sanctifying you. That's it. They're married. So. Do you need a rabbi in that ceremony? I honestly, I'm not 100% sure. My instinct is telling me you don't.
Okay, so there have to be 2 witnesses.
There have to be 2 witnesses, right?
So the rabbi wants to talk to the individual privately to see if he rules them in problem.
I'm not, again, it's probably just common sense to have a rabbi there who, again, is going to make sure the witnesses are who they need to be, and that, the things are said the proper way. At my wedding, my husband put the ring on the wrong hand, or was it the wrong hand or the wrong finger? The wrong finger. Now, I don't know, would that invalidate the marriage? No, but luckily the rabbi was there to say, no, to this finger. So again, you want to have somebody there who knows exactly what they're doing, and there are lots of little details that you need to get right, okay? Lots of mitigating circumstances. Sometimes this happens, what do you do? Sometimes that happens, what do you do? So it's always best to have that expert there, right? Okay, back to the shul thing. So again, but in terms of in the shul itself, a shul doesn't need a clergyman. The shul can function very well without one, right? Anything that needs to be done can be done, again, by any lay person who knows what they're doing. I want to give you a quote now from Donin, Rabbi Donin's book, How to Be a Jew. He says, it is the responsibility of the shul to promote the true center of Jewish life, which is the Jewish home. If the home is Jewishly strong, there will always be a need for a synagogue. But if the Jewish home is weak, even the synagogues are in danger of crumbling. So what this means is, when we think about a Torah observant person, right? When we want to say, is this person, use whatever word you want, orthodox, from, religious, what are we talking about? We're not, in the first and foremost, talking about how often this person goes to shul. What do we say? We say things like, are they kosher, right? So their level of kashrus is the issue. Are they shomer Shabbos? Do they keep the Sabbath? Those are like the 2 benchmarks of religiosity in our faith, right? Do they keep holidays? And then we also use Jewish education as a benchmark as well. Are their kids going to a day school versus maybe a public school, right? Those are usually the things that we look at. How in other words, and these are all in the purview of the home, right? Shabbos and Yom Tov are they are in the domain of the home. Education also starts in the home. From the moment that a child can start talking, we teach them moda'ani, we teach them Shema, we teach them Hashem is there, Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. We teach them the concepts of God being with us in our daily lives. We teach them the important values of tzedakah. They make, in the earliest years of kindergarten, they come home with a pushka, with a little tzedakah box. So we teach them the values of our religion. We teach them about Yom Tov. We teach them about God. And that all begins in the home from day one, really from day one. As soon as they can start talking, we teach them Moda'ani, right, in the morning, and Shema at night. So the education is the purview of the home and the purview of in most cases, the woman, the mother. The kashrus of the home, right, kashrus in general, which is such a thoroughly pervading aspect of our halachic lives, that is basically under the woman's care, right? The mother is usually the one in the kitchen, and she's the one who rules the roost. And when it comes to, right, the kashrus of the kitchen, she's really the rabbi of the home. We trust her to make sure that all the food is kosher, that all her pots are exactly where they need to be, and making sure that nothing is mixing with them. She really is a superintendent of that kitchen. And I'm sure it's not just in my home where the husband comes home and says, can you tell me where the milking pot is? Or can you tell me where we keep the par of knives? Even though, of course, he's been living in that same house that I have, right? And eating out of the same things I have for as long as we've been married. Still, somehow, it's the woman who knows, and somehow the husband doesn't. That's mostly the case. So they are the rabbis of their own homes. They're running the kitchen. They are encouraging their male relatives, their husbands and their kids, to go to shul, to learn Torah. She's the halachic decisor. Unless she has a course, but she knows how to run. We entrust her with running a kosher home. We entrust her with knowing what to do on Shabbos, what not to do on Shabbos, and on Yom Tov, on the holidays. So what is the role of the rabbi then? Okay, the role of the rabbi, and again, I go back to the analogy of the doctor. Now, understanding that halacha, Jewish law, pervades every minute practically that we're awake, right? Beginning in the morning with how to wash your hands for moda'ani, how to get dressed, how to put your shoes on. We have an order in which we have to put our shoes on, right? First foot, left foot second, tie left shoe, then tie the right shoe, right? All of these details, what to wear, what not to wear. We just had a whole 5-session class on tznius, right? What to eat, what not to eat, how to eat, when not to eat, what bracha to make, what after bracha to make. Halacha pervades every minute of our lives, how we interact with every person we meet. Being that halacha is such an all-encompassing system of laws and system of how to run our lives, it's inevitable that we're going to have questions. Right? There's inevitably going to come days. Might be several in a week, and it might be one in a blue moon. But there's going to be days when you need an expert in Jewish law to help guide you as to what is appropriate or what is just the correct thing to do. And therefore, the rabbi serves that purpose. As I said, historically speaking, that was his only purpose, just to help people do the correct thing in terms of halacha. He wasn't so much synagogue clergy. Today, he still has this function of helping people, right? And I'm lucky I'm married to a rabbi, so all I got to do is say, hey Fred, what do I have to do in this case? Or hey Fred, what's the right bracha on this? Or whatever the question is, he's right there. But I do turn to him multiple times in the day sometime. And luckily, as I said, I'm lucky to have a rabbi for a husband, and he answers those questions. At other times we will call a rabbinic authority as well, who is a particular expert in a particular area. For example, we've had a couple of questions having to do with monetary issues. One had to do with buying a house, and one had to do with how to deal with a store, a non-Jewish owned store. These were questions that required a real expert in these areas, and we called someone else. for guidance. There are, in addition, there are rabbis who are experts in their field, specialists, as it were, right? Rabbi First, for example, in Chicago, is known to be a specialist in the area of reproductive halachic issues. So if a person is dealing with that particular issue in their lives and they need a question answered, he's the one not only that a lay person might call, but also that other rabbis might call as an expert who knows really in depth a lot of the halachas relating to reproductive issues, right? So that's why we need a rabbi. Again, it's a doctor analogy. If I need someone who's an expert, I need a question answered, a medical question answered, I could turn to my friend who reads a lot, and that's fine, and they might know the right answer. Or I have a choice to turn to a doctor who has a degree, who has gone to medical school for 8 years, or however many it is, and has studied and has practiced, right, medicine, and has a more expert opinion and a more specialized opinion. And then if I'm not happy with that opinion, I'll then perhaps go to a specialist in that particular area, not just an MD, but a specialist, right? So it's a useful analogy to understanding why we need someone who is learned and expert in these matters, and that's the function of the rabbi. Now, the truth of the matter is, if we were educated, we can certainly educate ourselves in a lot of halachic matters, especially today when we have such a wealth of books written in English on so many halachic topics. It absolutely behooves us to read as much as we can to educate ourselves so that we don't necessarily need to go to a rabbi for questions. Certain questions have a clear answer, black and white answer, and we can find those answers out for ourselves very often. Does that answer your question?
Boy, yeah.
Are there any other questions? I mean, that really covers what I thought would cover the question. Maybe there are some elements of this discussion that I didn't think of. Yes, Leah.
The way synagogue is set up, we are facing forward. Well, in some cases, we're trying to face east because we're facing Yerushalayim.
Mm-hmm.
But also we're trying to face where the Torah is kept in the ark.
Right.
Because you talked about how it's not a spectator sport. We're supposed to be working on what's going on inside of ourselves in relation to our speaking with God. So why is it sometimes people will face in other directions? Like, I've seen like a rabbi facing the congregation.
I think you answered your own question. Let me just repeat the question. Your question was why in a shul are we not facing? Why are we sometimes
facing? I thought we're all supposed to face one way, and you said you have seen synagogues where they have facing various directions.
Yes, I have.
But never backward, except there's one line on Friday night.
Right.
But sometimes I've seen a rabbi facing the congregation, but we're not praying and we're praying to God.
Correct. And I'll tell you the truth. So your question is about the rabbi's seat in shul. Is that?
And I'm not sure 100% that everybody's always facing the front.
Well, no, that's the point, is that we don't need to be facing the front. So in the shul, the question for the video listeners is about the arrangement of seats in shul. So, as you mentioned, the aron, the ark in which we keep the Torah, that ideally should be facing east, of the east side of the building, because we want to face Jerusalem, right? Okay. It's the ark that needs to face on the eastern wall, not the seats. Okay. So I have been in plenty of shuls where, as I just said, there are some seats that face the ark, but others that face the middle of the shul. If you think about shuls with balconies, Matt, I don't know if you've ever been to shul with a balcony. Certainly, and balconies were, by the way, the preferred method of separating men and women in Europe, in European shuls, and even in shuls in America as well. I grew up in shuls with balconies in New York, and of course the balcony wraps around three sides of the building. So they all sort of, the seats ideally, they're faced either towards the middle, towards the center, or the front, but not necessarily all have to be positioned facing the Aron. Okay. Now, your question about the rabbi's seat. The rabbi is sometimes in shuls, given in most shuls, I think, given a seat, what's called a seat of honor, up at the head. It's sometimes next to the Aron, right? Is that what you're referring to when the seat is next to the Aron? So your question is, why doesn't the rabbi have to be also facing, right, the Aron? So again, I sort of answer the question. The seats don't necessarily face the Aron. It's the Aron that's on the eastern wall, and when, by the way, when we get up to say Shemona Esrei, we're facing the Aron.
Oh, so it's only during Shemona Esrei that we have to face the Aron. At other times, we have to face in different directions.
I'm trying to remember in shuls that have yes. We're facing the Aron during Shemona Esrei, during Kedusha as well. In other words, during the repetition of the Chazin's repetition of Shemona Esrei. When we get up to say Kedusha, we also do face the Aron. Yeah.
So in daily life,
But no. So I'm sorry. Just to finish your question. So therefore, the rabbi doesn't have to be sitting. When he's sitting down, he doesn't have to be facing the Aron. But when he stands for Shemona Esrei, I believe he would turn around to face the Aron. Go ahead.
well, in daily life, we're careful that when we are praying, we aren't facing the face of a human being. Because we want to remember that we're talking to God and we're not talking through a human being.
We try to enforce. The question was, how can the congregants face the rabbi when they're praying? So we try to enforce that during Shemona Esrei in particular. It's really more an issue for Shemona Esrei, and during Shemona Esrei, the rabbi is not facing the congregants; he's turned around. So it's not really an issue the rest of the time. We really only care about that during Shemona Esrei.
But our thoughts should not be a human being. Our thoughts when we're praying should be God.
Right, which really answers, our thoughts should be on God, and that's why it doesn't really matter so much where our seats are located, right? Because it's not an external visual, although there are visual aspects of the shul prayer service, it's not supposed to be a visual, externally visual process. It's an internal process. That's why I don't really care so much that I'm sitting behind mechitza, while it may bother some other women who can't see what's going on. As long as I hear the laning, if I can hear the laning, if I can hear the rabbi's speech, if he gives one, Torah Center we don't give one, but if I can hear what's going on, I need to concentrate on my sitter and me, and therefore I'm not focused on where the rabbi's sitting. I don't care so much that he's sitting in front of me, because ideally I'm not supposed to be focused on what's going on around me, really. Again, except for the certain visual moments of going up, seeing someone go up to get an aliyah, or hearing, seeing them take the Torah out of the ark. Those are visual moments, but really the prayerful moments happen in a non-visual element, even though we're in shul together. It's happening here, me and my sitter. I'm not supposed to be watching the rabbi. I'm not supposed to care who's sitting next to me. That's the whole point of separate seating as well. If I'm not supposed to, I'll get you in a minute, Barb. If I'm not supposed to care about who's sitting beside me, then it shouldn't be an issue that I want to sit with my husband, I want to sit with my friend, I want to sit with my son. I'm not supposed to be, I couldn't care less who's sitting next to me. I care about my prayer with God. Yeah, Barbara.
Okay, so when did it become important what direction you're facing? And how really important is it?
So Barbara's question for our video audience is, when did facing Jerusalem begin?
And how really important is it?
So it is important, even in our own homes when we pray, to answer your second question first. When we pray the Shemona Esrei, the Amida prayer, we do it even wherever we are, outside, inside, home, playground, school, we do it facing east. We do it facing east. Mm-hmm. So it is important. When did that start? I can't tell you that. I'll write it down and try to get an answer for you next week. I don't know. I would guess, I'm just going to try to answer this. No, I don't want to guess.
Okay.
Well, you had a follow-up. I don't want to guess. I don't want to give you wrong information. Go ahead, Barbara. But I'm going to write down to find out next week. What's your other question?
The point of stringency, that the prayers are invalidated if you're not, which doesn't.
No, absolutely not. No, because there are times when you can't face east. For example, you're traveling in a vehicle that is constantly maneuvering around roads, right? That you can't. You're not stationary. You're in a moving vehicle. People daven. They say Shemona Esrei on a bus, in a car if they have to, on a plane, right? So there are times when it's impossible to do so. They still do say Shemona Esrei. So obviously, your prayers are not invalid if you don't face east. No. You had a question, Francis?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.